At the time of this video, the iQoo 12 is one of the fastest and most powerful phones in the world, and if it's not number one right now, it's definitely top 3. And I will be running some benchmarks later on in this video and showing you guys some thermals so you can really see what's going on when it comes to the speed and power here. And for those of you not so familiar with iQoo, they are a big deal and they are Vivo's sister company. And if you're a motorsports fan, you may have seen the iQoo branding on BMW's M Motorsports vehicles. And that's because iQoo phones have so much speed and power, and so do the cars. Anyway, let's run through some core specs, then we'll get it out of the box and get a closer look at the design. This is one of the first phones to be rocking the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is the fastest Android chip on the planet right now. And to add to this firepower, iQoo has thrown in their own turbo booster. They call it the Q1. It's a supercomputing chip explicitly designed to improve gaming performance. And make sure you stick around to see the gameplay section of this video because there are some game-changing features that this phone has. Storage options are 256GB on the base model, 512 on the maxed out version. Both are UFS 4.0, and just for context, UFS storage 4.0 can copy 8 gigabits in just 20 seconds. The RAM on the iQoo 12 is LPDDR5X, which is the latest and greatest available right now. The base model has 12 gigabytes and the maxed out version has 16 gigabytes. And this is crazy when you consider that a lot of brand new laptops that retail in shops today ship with less than half that amount. There are 2 color options available: Alpha, which is a kind of dark frosted finish, and then there's the Legend Edition, which is the one that I have here today with the maxed out ROM and RAM. So this is the fastest version available. Okay, so now it's time to unleash this beast, the monster within. And for the sake of keeping this video fast, let me show you guys a magic trick. So here's everything that you get with the iQoo 12 in the box. You got a quick start guide with some warranty information. You have a little art card here with some BMW Motorsport vehicles on it. The phone itself in the legendary white color with a pre-installed screen protector. See-through silicone case with a cutout for the massive camera module and also a cutout for the flash. And on the top, a couple of cutouts here, cutouts on the base as well. USB-C to C charging cable. And something that we don't see that often anymore, a charging brick. And as you can see, this isn't just any charging brick. This can support 120 watts, which means this is fast enough to charge a laptop if you wanted to use it that way, and a SIM ejector tool. The frame of the iQoo 12 is made of an aluminium alloy. The edges are flat, similar to that seen on the iPhone. The power button and volume rocker are on the right side. It has an IR blaster at the top with dual SIM tray at the base, and this phone does support 5G, and in fact it can support 2 5G SIMs simultaneously, and you'll notice that there is a rubber gasket around the SIM tray, and this shows that iQoo have made some attempts to make this phone waterproof, and in fact it does have an IP64 rating, which means some light splashes, some light rain won't hurt this phone, which is great if you live in England or anywhere else in the world where it might rain a lot. The back of the iQoo 12 has a really interesting finish. It has rounded edges so it sits comfortably in your hand. The material used is a white porcelain enamel glass, which differentiates it from regular glass back panels. And I do love that BMW Motorsports inspired badge. And actually each one of these 3 colors has a little bit of a backstory to it. Hit me up in the comments if you want to know more about that. The camera module is also unique, and actually this shape here has been modeled on a porthole that you might see on a spacecraft, an aircraft, or a ship. And the firepower of this camera hardware and software is next level, and we'll come back to that shortly. And you might have noticed already, this phone is thin. It is just 8.1 millimeter thin, but surprisingly, it does have a 5000 milliamp hour battery inside. And this is partly due to the fact that iQoo are using a new battery tech, and it is an industry first. It's the first ever pro performance graphite battery in a smartphone. Put simply, it can be thinner than more commonly used batteries whilst delivering the same amount of power. And with the 120 watt charger that iQoo provides in the box, it charges incredibly fast. And when it comes to audio, the iQoo 12 has symmetrically placed stereo speakers for proper stereo separation, and each driver now has a larger chamber than before. And this means that this phone can deliver deeper bass. The haptic motor is also larger than before, so haptic feedback will provide more of a kick than the previous model. And here's a little side-by-side comparison of the speakers versus the iPhone, so you can compare how they sound. First up, we'll do the iPhone. Now let's talk about arguably the most essential aspect of any phone, the screen. The screen itself is a 6.78 inch 144Hz flat LTPO AMOLED with HDR10+ certification. The resolution is 2800 by 1260 with a PPI of 452. And get this, the peak brightness here on the iQoo 12 is 3000 nits. Now, if everything I just said doesn't mean that much to you, just know this: the screen is incredibly detailed, sharp, with amazing dynamic range. It's incredibly bright, and in fact brighter than the 2023 iPhone and Galaxy flagships. And another win for the iQoo here is that it supports MEMC and 2160Hz PWM dimming, which significantly reduces screen flicker and will reduce eye strain as a result. So if you find yourself glued to the screen for prolonged hours, you shouldn't find your eyes becoming tired too often. And there's also other eye care protection features built in, as you would expect. And I'm sure you guys already noticed the iQoo 12's display has a centrally placed punch hole for the selfie camera, and that brings me nicely onto the cameras. The selfie camera uses a 16 megapixel sensor f2.45 27mm equivalent, and one really nice feature that I appreciate when it comes to photography is once you've taken a photo, you then have the option to scale the photo's quality down or the overall image size down if you need a smaller file size for sharing. And also when you go into edit, there's a bunch of beautification tools here, which I probably should use more often. And there are a ton of things, but most notably the Magic Eraser tool, which allows you to erase things from photos. On the back, the iQoo 12 has a triple camera layout. The porthole camera module has a really nice design that kind of resembles a lens filter that you might screw onto a regular camera lens, and it kind of looks like it should be able to twist. Across the top of all the cameras here is one piece of glass, and because the entire camera module is pretty large, it actually stops it from rocking around when laid flat on a surface. The primary camera is a 50 megapixel f1.68 23mm equivalent, and this has been titled by iQoo as an astrophotography camera, and that's because it has a large 1/1.3 inch sensor, which offers more than 80% better light intake than the iQoo 11. And that phone by today's standards is still a beast in my opinion. And then when you combine this new sensor with the optical image stabilization and the electrical image stabilization and the upgraded image signal processing of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, this phone is said to be able to deliver astrophotography pictures without a tripod. And there's even software on board that can recognize constellations in the night sky for you. That's assuming that they are visible to the human eye, but in England, it's constantly cloudy and I've yet to be able to test out that feature, but it is there if you need it. And then there's the periscope telephoto camera, which uses a 64 megapixel half-inch sensor that can zoom between 3x, 10x, and 100x. This uses the NICE, the NICE algorithm, which is sometimes used on high-end telescopes to refine details using AI. And the same periscope camera is also used for the super macro mode and the portrait mode. So really, it is a 3-in-1 camera, and that's probably why iQoo put in such a big sensor here. Then we've got an ultra wide camera, which is also 50 megapixels with an aperture of f2.0, 15mm focal length equivalent. It really is impressive that iQoo haven't left any weak links in their camera hardware, and in fact, the periscope sensor is larger than the primary sensor. And here are a few photos versus the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. Let me know how you feel this one performs versus those two very formidable foes. And if you guys want to see a camera comparison with this phone versus some other phones, let me know what that is in the comments and I will do my best to make it for you. And there are so many video features to talk about with this phone that it probably deserves its own video. But in regards to maximum quality, it can shoot up to 8K at 30 frames per second, and the stabilization features here are some of the best that I've seen. So the iQoo 12 is running the most powerful Snapdragon chip to date, and it is one of the first to have it. Of course, it's the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and I did make an entire video specifically about that chip. So if you guys want to learn a bit more about it, I'll link it at the end. The out-of-the-box software is Android 14 with iQoo's Fun Touch OS skin over the top. There are some pre-installed apps here and some suggestions that you'll encounter on the first launch. But thanks to the managed storage feature, they're easy to uninstall if not needed. There are a few standout features of Fun Touch OS that I really like. For example, the dynamic effects page gives you tons of animation effects to play with, so you can truly make the phone your own. And I like how the power button is in fact a power button by default, but you can remap it to Google Assistant if preferred. It would have been nice to have more input options like a double tap to open an app or something like that. And that's something that if enough people ask for, maybe iQoo will add it in the future. Something else that I really like is the various options for the battery indicator at the top. You can have it vertical or sideways or even change it to a power ring. And then there's the sidebar feature for quick access to your apps that you don't necessarily want pinned to your home screen permanently. And this sidebar also opens the door to floating windows and split screening more easily. And everything runs really smoothly and really snappy. But if the iQoo 12 isn't already fast enough for you, you can in fact use the RAM expansion feature, which uses some of that UFS 4.0 storage as virtual RAM for the phone, and you can double the RAM. So on this model here, I could have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is definitely overkill, but it's fantastic that the option is there. And there is a hidden monster mode that you can enable that will max out the CPU and GPU if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of battery. And there's also features here within Fun Touch OS that allows you to improve the speaker quality. If you dive into the sound quality and effects menu, you can enable audio super resolution and super audio, which uses AI to improve lower quality audio played back on the phone. And then there is the ultra game mode. Now, in my opinion, the iQoo 12's speed and power are best utilized when gaming. Using the ultra game mode, you can make use of the monster mode, which basically turns everything up to 11. And this is where the Q1 supercomputing chip kicks in, and using the tools that the ultra game mode offers, you can enable game frame interpolation, which upscales whatever game you're playing to simulate a 144 Hz refresh rate. And to do this, you've got to enable the frame rate booster setting. You can also enable game display enhancements, which again uses the Q1 chip to upscale the picture quality of whatever game you're playing. And there are control settings to play with also that can improve screen responsiveness and sensitivity. And if you really want to take it to the next level, you can actually map motion controls to various on-screen touch inputs, which could be a game changer for you once you get the hang of them. And honestly, I have never seen Genshin Impact look this good before, and PUBG runs amazingly well here with all the graphics and audio settings maxed out. And Call of Duty also plays amazingly well on this phone. And iQoo has equipped the 12 with a 6K vapor chamber with 4 zones, purpose built to direct any heat whilst gaming away from your hands. And it's one thing just to talk about it, but let me show you where that heat actually goes. So this thermal reading was taken roughly 45 minutes after playing back-to-back games on Genshin, Call of Duty and PUBG. And as you can see, the max temperature is just 37 degrees in the top right corner. And the central temperature is around 36 degrees. And you'll notice the edges at the top and bottom stay cooler than the central part of the body. Okay, so I didn't plan to do this, but I got carried away with the gaming on the phone that I've managed to run the battery down to 0. And that is a good thing because now I can do a battery charging speed test from 0 to 100. Let's see how fast it can charge. So we've got 28% with just 10 minutes charge. And 65% in 20 minutes. Okay, so if you're wondering how fast the phone charges, it takes about 32 minutes to go from 0 to 100. And now it's time for the benchmarks. So first I ran the 3D Mark Wildlife benchmark test, and the phone was literally too fast for the test It actually maxed out the frames per second and overall scores, and it barely broke a sweat in the process, with max temperatures reaching just 29 degrees. Now, if you've never ran one of these tests before, you should know anything below 39 degrees after one of these tests is pretty damn good. So 29 degrees is fantastic. And then when I dived into the rankings on 3D Mark, the iQoo 12 is in fact the #1 in their charts at the time of this video, and is even above the Pro model, which was surprising to see. Next up, I tested Geekbench 6 with the CPU and GPU tests, and here's how it stacks up against a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 device, and in this case it is the Galaxy S23 Ultra, and as you can see, the CPU is significantly higher. And last but not least, I ran the new Antutu benchmark, and it achieved a score of 2,073,603. And when you look at the scores on the current leaderboard on Antutu's website, the iQoo 12 would rank #1. So there we go, guys, that's the iQoo 12. Let me know what you think of this phone in the comments, and let me know if you want to see a camera comparison with this phone. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man, and I will see you guys in the next one. Don't be late.
I believe in speed.